We keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and coming up in just a few short moments, we're going to play my conversation with economics professor at Smith College, Massachusetts, Andrew Zimbalist, about the economic impact brand new stadiums have on the state, the city, and of course the taxpayers, what the motivation is of billionaires to threaten fan bases of relocation, and of course what taxpayers should be looking out for through these times as negotiations between billionaires, the city, the state, the counties are going on. But before we get to that conversation, let's set the table. Just a few days ago, Jerry Reinsdorf and his team went down to Springfield to talk to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. And in that meeting, it was reported that the Chicago White Sox and related Midwest are asking for $1 billion in public money to build their proposed new stadium. And that's on top of expected $500 million subsidy for infrastructure from a city TIF district that covers the site. That's tax incremental financing. That's money that's dedicated to certain neighborhoods, certain projects, certain historical renovations. And while they were pitching that plan, this is what they are proposing. That the plan is to create an investment funds from housing, bars, restaurants, a 4,000 spot parking garage, and parks around the stadium from the state's subsidy to create funding back to the state. The White Sox hope to use a 2% hotel occupancy fee to pay the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority. That's the entity that is used for constructing sports stadiums, and that also includes Guaranteed Rate Field and what was going on for Soldier Field. So that money is dedicated to pay off all that debt. And on the Bears front, this comes just a few days after the Cook County tax authorities valued the team's proposed stadium site at nearly $124.7 million. That's an estimated 10 to 11 million increase that the Bears were not anticipating. The ruling also came in substantially lower than the $160 million valuation sought out by the local school districts in Arlington Heights. And now this has created the conversation about the Bears using the South Lot and what kind of tax breaks, subsidies, type of bonds they can get. Mind you, while all this is going on, the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority still owes nearly $500 million through 2032 on public bonds issued for the renovation of Soldier Field. So as you can see, that's a lot to break down. And that's just the most recent news. So that is why we are so excited for you to hear our conversation with economics professor at Smith College, Massachusetts, Andrew Zimbalist, as he breaks down why billionaires use relocation strategy to move their team, what the actual economic impact will be on the taxpayers and the fan base, why some ploys used in these scenarios are lies, and what you can look out for not only as a fan but as a taxpayer as these negotiations are going on. So enjoy our interview with economics professor at Smith College, Massachusetts, Andrew Zimbalist, here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm Mike Mercado. Andrew Zimbalist, economics professor at Smith College, joins us here on the Sports Cubicle. I want to get your thoughts on this because you're somebody who we've been so excited to talk with. You had a talk with the people at Colorado State a few years back about the honeymoon phase, about what it means for a team to build this new stadium and what it's going to take for a stadium to actually impact the economy. What do you mean by that for fans who are just coming into this only as Bears fans, only as White Sox fans that don't really have an idea of what's really going to impact them if these deals go through?
One of the things that will impact the fans right away is that it's unquestionable that ticket prices will go up. Part of the reason why team owners want to have a new stadium is because they introduce more club seats and more luxury boxes, and there are also fewer regular seats. Because there are fewer regular seats, the demand supply equation pushes those prices up as well. So one of the things that will happen unquestionably is that ticket prices will go up, and one shouldn't be surprised if you also see concessions and some other prices go up as well. So that will impact the fans. Beyond that, there's not likely to be much of an economic push or an economic gain for the city of Chicago with new stadiums. You know, football stadiums are used for these days roughly 10 football games a year, and maybe another 10 or on the outside 15 concerts from the likes of Taylor Swift and others. But so you're talking about using a football stadium for maybe 25 days a year. That means that 340 days are dark. It's not being used. And you know, most retailers and restaurants and hotels and even commercial buildings don't find it advantageous to locate next to a football stadium under that kind of very irregular and infrequent usage. Baseball, obviously, the numbers are higher because you've got 81 regular season home games. But still, a baseball stadium by itself is, you're talking about 100 days out of 365 days. And of course, either the football stadium to be used by the MLS team or baseball stadium to be used for local high school tournaments or college games or whatever, you can add a little bit to those numbers, but you're still talking about a stadium that occupies somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 acres for the stadium itself. And then especially for football, you have much more than that, more than the 8 or 10 acres for parking. And baseball, you probably have a bunch of parking area too, and you have infrastructure that takes up land. So you're taking up a lot of land. The financing deal that's usually offered is one where, and this has been the case for Reinsdorf with the White Sox and with McCaskey for the Bears. The financing has been largely public. In the case of the renovation of Soldier Field back in 2002, 2/3 of it was public money and 1/3 came from the NFL. McCaskey, as far as I understand, did not put up anything. But look, the reason why McCaskey and Reinsdorf want new stadiums is because they think they'll generate more revenue for their team and increase their profits. And they should be making healthy contributions here. I mean, look what just happened in Inglewood, Los Angeles, where Stan Kroenke built a new stadium, SoFi. He put $5 billion of private money into that, $5 billion of private, and he's putting additional money into the surrounding area. There wasn't any public money. And so, it can be done. In the case of the Bears, you're talking about a team that's evaluated at over $5 billion. Of course, that Hallis bought that team originally. Senior Hallis bought it originally for $100. So there's enough private money there to chip in. The short answer is that the economic scholarship on stadium building by itself is not very encouraging. You cannot anticipate a positive economic gain. If the city of Chicago is convinced, if the people of the city of Chicago are convinced that the Bears will leave the city and the White Sox will leave the city if there's not a new stadium, then the argument really to provide some public support is this is a culturally attractive element of the community of Chicago. It enriches the lives of, at least not everybody would necessarily believe that, but I think there is an argument that it enriches the community. It creates a deeper sense of community, gives people more ties to each other, more things that they can enjoy together. So that's the value. It's not an economic value. And what really needs to be thought about when Chicago is approached or Illinois is approached for new public funds to build yet another stadium, yet another new stadium, it shouldn't be, hey, this is going to be an economic boon for the city. It's not going to be. It should be, how much is it worth to us culturally to keep these teams here? And on that basis, there could be some public contribution. But one has to be very careful because obviously there are lots and lots of public needs, and you don't want to be squandering the public resources that you have to help a billionaire get a little bit richer rather than, who knows, building new schools or new housing or polyclinics or whatever.
Andrew Zimbalist, economics professor at Smith College, Massachusetts. This is exactly why we wanted you on here in Chicago, because there's just so many rain of emotions going on for people. And there's just so many different ways of life, from the White Sox leaving the South Side and essentially Jerry Reinsdorf throwing that fan base that has really propped them up for so many years and trying to jump on this 78th project. And what's going on with the Bears and the school district is all just fascinating. And it's something we hope to have you on many more times over the next year or so. But I want to ask you this one. When did billionaires figure this out, this script out, this talking about economic impact reports and getting these subsidies and getting these bonds? Was it 10, 15 years ago when billionaires were able to figure out that they can use the emotions of sports fans, the civic pride? When did that become the ultimate grift of buying real estate and buying into these exclusive clubs?
Well, so I think that that whole process began in the early 1950s in baseball. When you had 50, after 52 season, 53, 54 season, you had the Philadelphia A's moving to Kansas City, you had the Boston Braves moving to Milwaukee, and what those, and eventually in 57 you have the Dodgers and the Giants moving from New York to California. What that movement created, and it was the first time any baseball teams had moved since the creation of Major League Baseball in 1903. It was the merging of the National League and the American League in 1903. It was the first time you had teams moving. They discovered that, the population had grown a lot in the United States between 1903 and 1950s, and the income level had grown even more. And so there were a lot of wealthy cities out there that were quite capable of hosting baseball teams. But the number of baseball teams was the same. It was stayed at 16, all of those 5 decades or 6 decades. And so the demand from cities to host teams was growing faster, much faster than the supply, which was basically stagnant. And that gave owners some leverage, and owners started to notice that. And when one owner got a subsidy, the next owner wanted to get a subsidy. So that happened, and there was a big building boom in the 60s and 70s. And then it started all over again in 1992 with Camden Yards. Some might refer back to the new Comiskey Park in 1991 as starting a new trend of building stadiums in downtown areas rather than building them in the suburbs. And as that happened, and television contracts exploded, the franchise values went higher and higher. So I think the process started in the 50s, but it's just gotten deeper and deeper over the decades, and that's where we are today.
Andrew, Professor, this was absolutely amazing. Shout out to that amazing article you did on stadiums as public investments. That was such a great read. Shout out to your sons for the 2 Escobars. That was an amazing, Doug. That was great. So Chicago, we found ourselves a great, smart person that's going to make us smarter in this entire situation. Before we let you go, you're super busy. Any final words for Chicago in this situation to keep an eye out? Because while there's a lot of pretty renderings and AI, artificial intelligent arts, and PR groups working to make it look cool, anything for the citizens, the taxpayers, sports fans, everybody to keep an eye out during this process with 2 stadiums?
All sorts of things, all sorts of ways that public money can be hidden. So it appears like there's no public contribution, but in fact there is. So one of the ways that that happens is you can make land available for development at below market prices or even for free. And you can give them long-term tax exemptions, tax abatements. And so it doesn't look like the city is putting any money out, but in fact they are indirectly, you just can't see it. But that's just one of many areas. You need to bring in some people who understand this well and are sitting down at the negotiating table on behalf of the city.
Economics professor at Smith College, Massachusetts. He is Andrew Zimbalist. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sports Cubicle in Chicago. You have no idea what a treasure you have been for us. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you very much. Nice to say that. Bye-bye.